Okay.
It's 8 o'clock, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna make you the co-host so you can share your slides.
Sounds good.
Okay, hang on, now I gotta find where your name is, for crying out loud. Here you are. Well, thank you everyone tonight for joining our call on the 1915I. We have Monica Haugen, who is in charge of that program, who is going to let us know some information about that. Monica, and maybe you want to, let folks know a little bit about yourself as well. So hang on.
Sure. Yeah, so I am the program administrator for 1915I. I work in the behavioral health division. I've been in my position only for about 6 months, about 5 months now. So I'm relatively new. I kind of jumped in when the implementation phase began. Just really excited about the services that we're able to provide, and excited to get more providers engaged and get more individuals enrolled, because I think we've got a lot of great things to offer. So yeah. Can you guys all see my my slides? Let's see. I'm used to Teams now instead of Zoom, so I'm kind of
I can see it, yes.
okay, perfect. So oh my goodness. Sorry, I'm gonna try again because I don't see it advancing. So this is the one I want. Okay, resume slideshow. Oh, there we go. Okay, can you see that moving?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. All right, so I'll just go ahead and get started here. I'm going to cover 4 basic things for us tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about the basics of what the 1915I is, and then I'm going to talk about some updates that we've proposed to CMS, and we're waiting on approval or the next steps there. And then I'm going to talk about individual enrollment and how that works, and then what's next for the 1915I. So, well, oh, now it's not moving again. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So as far as what the 1915I is, it's an amendment to our state Medicaid plan. And what it does is it allows some additional services that are home and community based to be provided in North Dakota and billed to Medicaid.
Monica, can I stop you for a minute and ask you, can people see when she advanced to the next slide or no?
No.
No, it's still the initial slide.
Okay.
Shoot. Okay. What is happening?
I think it's just sharing your wrong screen.
Is that? Oh,
Just stop sharing and then try resharing again.
I'm sorry. I've only been doing the same thing for, feels like forever. Okay. Oh, there
There you go.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that was my last slide there, just the brief description of what the 1915I is. As far as our enrollment qualifications, the plan is for ages 0 up. We have specific services that are kind of more geared towards children and youth, and some specific services that are geared more towards adults. And tonight I'm going to focus on those that are geared more towards children and youth, because I feel like that would be what you guys are most interested in. The individual does need to be enrolled in Medicaid or Medicaid expansion to be eligible. Household income needs to be at or below 150% of the federal poverty level. And then there's a list of qualifying behavioral health diagnoses. It's about 6 pages long. So there's, if there's any sort of behavioral health diagnoses, whether it be brain injury or mental health diagnoses, there's a real good chance that it's on that list. And then also the HUDAS score has to be 50 or more. And the individual needs to meet the HCBS settings rule, which just means they need to live in a home and community based setting. So just not an institution. So not at a nursing home, not in an ICF type of a group home, not at a hospital, but otherwise all of the different community, you know, if somebody lives in their home, then that does qualify them. So I don't know if everybody's familiar with what the HUDAS is. So I'll just really briefly kind of explain that. And all of these are live links. So when I share this, you'll be able to kind of follow them and get more information. But the HUDAS is an assessment that's supposed to be appropriate for all cultures, all ages. It's basically an assessment that determines if someone has a functional impairment and kind of what level their functional impairment is. A 50 is a pretty significant functional impairment. So it breaks down areas of people's lives into different domains, and they're kind of scored in each of the domains. And it's things like, you know, how they take care of themselves, how they get along with others, how they do in the community or at school, or those different things. And kind of the average of all those different domains is what goes into that score. And we'll talk about, we have requested that score be lowered, and we're not sure that that's going to be approved, but that request is sitting with CMS right now, and hopefully we'll be able to lower that score to 25, which will mean really great things. It'll mean that the impairment for somebody who's eligible doesn't have to be as significant as it does right now. So that'll mean a lot more people will be eligible. Any questions on that HUDAS or any of the other requirements at all?
I have a question about the HCBS settings rule, because I
Sure.
just kind of struggled explaining that to a client last night and I really had no clue. So
So do you want me just to like go into more detail about that, or just kind of again explain what it is, or?
just maybe explain what it is again. I don't know.
Yeah. So essentially what it means is that somebody is not living in an institution that's funded by Medicaid.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was making it
Yeah.
more complicated.
Yeah, no, it is kind of, I like to kind of keep it at that simple level because it does get really complicated. But for, you know, 9 out of 10 people, that very simple explanation is adequate. So yeah, so as long as they don't live in an ICF group home, or like the state hospital or any other hospital at the current time, or a nursing home, it's pretty much somebody who meets that rule. So
Monica, you also have a question in the chat on
Oh, sure.
why the income cutoff.
that's a Medicaid, to be eligible for Medicaid. That's something to do with the Medicaid rules. I'm not quite sure exactly how that 150% was determined, but that was a negotiation process with CMS. And yeah, I could maybe get more information on why that is, but I don't know it offhand. Just that's kind of where they landed when they were negotiating the terms of the amendment. So, and I guess I can explain that the 1915I is meant to be a gap filler, kind of to fill in where there's some missing pieces and some services that are already offered in the state. It's not meant to be something that really supports an individual in and of itself. It's kind of meant to complement some other services that are out there. So people can use the 1915I services as well as like the autism waiver or the DD waiver. We just have to make sure that whichever services they're receiving through 1915I are not being duplicated in whatever other services they're receiving. So that being said, the intent for the 1915I and the reason it came about is to address those gaps that were in the delivery system for behavioral health. But they, were really meant to address those people with really the most critical need. Those individuals who really, without an additional amount of support, would kind of fall through the cracks and maybe not be successful, and maybe not be able to maintain living in the community. So I think that's why we landed on the diagnoses that we did, the HUDAS score that we did, and I would imagine that that's why that where that federal poverty level comes into play as well. So.
Monica, there's one more question in the chat. It says, what professionals can diagnose and be an accepted diagnosis?
Oh, for the qualifying behavioral health diagnosis?
Correct.
Anybody who's able to make a diagnosis. I mean, there's, you know, such a broad range of professionals who can do that. You know, it's any kind of counselor that has the capacity to diagnose, any of the social workers who have that capacity, that's within their scope. It doesn't have to be just from a primary or just from a psychiatrist or a psychologist. It can be anyone who has that capacity to make that diagnosis. Any other questions on the qualifications? All right, I'll keep moving along here. So as far as the services that are offered under 1959, there's 12 services altogether. Really 6 of those are more pertain to youth and children. So I'm going to focus on those services that are highlighted here. So it's care coordination, training and support for unpaid caregivers, respite, supported education, family peer support, and then supported employment. So I'll go into a little bit of detail about each of those to kind of get an understanding of what those look like. So care coordination, everybody who receives 1959 services, that's the first stop for them is that care coordinator. That's the person who specifically coordinates the access to all of the other 1959 services that a person might need. They're the ones who do those assessments and just, you know, work really hard with the individual and their families and everybody else to try to figure out all of the services that would benefit the individual. So everybody has that care coordinator. Like I said, they do that individualized needs assessment, but just really, you know, somebody may have like a DDPM or a mental illness case manager, some other kind of case manager. And this care coordinator is, again, kind of complementary to that. It doesn't replace any of those other case manager type people in their life. It's, like I said, it's very specific to the coordination of 1959 services. So the care coordinator and the person or their guardian helps develop that person-centered plan of care, which again just kind of talks about what the person's needs are, what their goals are, and which services within the 1959 are going to best help them meet those needs and achieve those goals. So the care coordinator is the person who then reaches out to those other providers, whether it be the respite care or, you know, the family peer supports, and makes that request on behalf of the individual. You know, are you able to serve this person in this capacity? And then they just help them get all those services lined up. So training and support for unpaid caregivers is a really cool service, and we don't have any providers yet enrolled to provide this service. We're still really working on growing our provider base right now. But when we do, I'm really excited about this one, and I talk about it with everybody. So this is a really kind of unique, it's 2 tiers, and the first piece is financial assistance for caregivers. So I think it's like $520 now. So each year that there's determined to be a need, the caregiver of the person who's eligible for the services has access to this amount of money they can use to go to conferences, do, you know, online classes, do community classes, you know, purchase any sort of educational materials that might be beneficial, anything that they can do to help them better be prepared to serve in that caregiver role. And then on top of that, there's also that hands-on support, kind of like a parent aid type of a position. You know, just working with the family on anything that they might need to again better provide those caregiving services for the individual. So, you know, whether that's parenting stuff, how to manage the home, conflict resolution, any kind of parenting issues that may come up. This service can also be used if there's been disruption in the home, if the child is in foster care. This service can still be used, and the provider can help with those reunification efforts. So they can help attend those meetings. You know, there's all sorts of entities involved if there's disruption in the home. So kind of helping bridge that that relationship with the different people that are involved with those kind of things, so they can help with all that. So it's a really neat service, and I really hope that we get some providers enrolled to provide that very soon. Respite, that's kind of a cut and dry. You know, most people know what respite is. It's just a short-term relief for caregivers of individuals aged 0 to 21 who are eligible. And then supported education. This can really look just what the individual needs it to look like. There's no box that this goes into. It can be in the classroom support, which I think is probably going to be pretty rare. You know, if a student has a para in the classroom already, the school is not going to want someone in addition to be in the classroom, but it is a possibility. Really what this service does is it helps the individual work on things that aren't addressed in the ISP, or excuse me, in the IEP. So things like building natural supports, you know, really just encouraging them, increasing their motivation for school, helping learn, you know, helping with academic competencies, helping empower the student, helping them develop that self-advocacy and self-efficacy, that feeling that they can do this and they can be successful. And then assistance with developing connections and natural supports, like those social skills, you know, learning how to be a good friend in the classroom and how to be a good student and all of those different things. Now, this service isn't just for small children. This could also be for somebody who is transition age, who might be looking at going on to higher education, whether that be community college, regular college. If they need help like accessing disability services or anything like that so that they can be successful when they make that transition, this service provider can help with those kind of things as well. So it's really, you know, really just based on what the individual needs as far as support.
Monica, there's 2 questions before we move on to peer support. Sure. One of them is, can this service be used for a temporary condition or only chronic conditions?
You know, it's just based on that diagnosis. If there is a diagnosis, then the individual is eligible. You know, we require as part of the application just like a copy of that health record with that diagnosis listed. And if it's on there, then they're eligible. So I don't know if I've ever seen anything indicated like, you know, as kind of a temporary condition, or can you maybe give me an example of something you're thinking of? Or
Sarah, do you want to expand on your comment?
And you can reach out to me separately too if you're more comfortable that way.
I was wondering, like, maybe a specific event is a reason why a family might be struggling, like maybe they lost a family member or there was a car accident or something, but once they get through that event they might not need support anymore, but maybe they're dealing with like mourning of a family member if somebody died or something like that. Could they still get, if they were diagnosed, like some women have postpartum depression, for example, that's usually temporary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as long as that diagnosis, so the eligibility is redetermined annually. So in that situation, I can see where an individual may be determined to be eligible. And then when we go to redetermine their eligibility the next year, if that diagnosis is maybe then removed from their diagnosis list, then they would no longer be eligible for services. Does that kind of make sense? So
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I can see that being a situation where, yeah, if they did get a diagnosis of, you know, depression or whatever it was, and that qualified them, and then later on that wasn't the case. Yeah, I mean, I can see that happening. So that's a good question. Thank you.
The next one was, can respite be self-directed and agency, and what does short-term mean?
Okay, so as far as self-directed, can you explain to me what what you mean by that.
Yep, this is Vicki Peterson. So self-directed would mean that the person who needed that respite would hire their own. So we have that in other waivers, Medicaid waivers.
Oh,
So they would
okay.
get a budget from the state
Mhm,
that was determined by their person-centered plan,
mhm.
and they could hire their own person.
Yeah,
Of course, agency would be, with anybody. And then I heard you say that respite is short-term. So I don't know what short-term is.
I can pull up the information on it, like there's service limits for everything. So there's, I'm not 100% familiar off the top of my head with what the service limit for respite is, but I'm gonna pull it up here so I can see. So as far as the self-directed, the way the 1959 is structured is that a service provider, so like the person who would be providing the respite care, has to be enrolled as an individual provider underneath a group umbrella. So the group umbrella would be like an agency, and then they would be enrolled to provide services underneath that agency. So the way the billing works for 1959 is in order to bill for that service actually being provided, the NPI numbers for both the agency and the individual as the renderer of the services have to be entered into the billing process. So I'm gonna say, I'm pretty sure.
So it would be different than other Medicaid waivers then.
It would be
have the option of self-directed. This doesn't have an option of self-directed.
No, I'm gonna say no, just because I know that's how the billing is structured. Yeah. But let me pull up. Let's see. Give me 1 second while I locate this. Sorry, our website is not ideal in my opinion. I'm eventually hoping to get in here and kind of make it a little more user friendly. Okay, so for respite specifically, so the service limit is 40 hours per month. I think what the service description means by short term is it's not like it's not meant to be like a 24-hour care type of a service. Now, does that mean that somebody couldn't maybe arrange for respite for like a weekend? I don't know that that's outside the realm of possibility. So let's see. Yeah, the scope just says provided to participants unable to care for themselves, furnished on a short-term basis because of the absence or need for relief of persons who normally provide care for the participant. So yeah, it's more just that short-term relief. If somebody needs just a break, needs to run errands, needs to, get things done for themselves, do some self-care. It's kind of more intended for those purposes rather than, long stretches at a time. But it's not really defined, a minimum of or a maximum of 4 hours at a time or anything like that. So I think it might be more something that can be negotiated with the provider as long as you maintain the service within those service limits. And that's something that can be, when the person-centered plan of care is developed, if there are needs that are maybe longer stretches of time, but less often, that's something that can be addressed in that plan then. And when the care coordinator reaches out to the respite provider, they can say, this is what they're looking for, so that the provider is aware of what their needs are. Does that kind of answer? I know it's kind of a non-answer because it's, some of these things we really, from my understanding, were left not super specific so as to be able to be more flexible based on individuals' needs. So everything, you know, they made an effort not to really drill down on everything. So,
So I have like a situation. So if you had somebody accessing this 1915I who is also on the developmental disability waiver,
mhm,
and question arising under the developmental disability waiver, they have respite, but it was not enough to meet the family's needs. They
mhm.
also qualified for this program. So when does the duplication happen? I mean, if they've already used everything they have under their DD plan, could they use the respite under, because they qualified for the 1915I as well?
Right, and that's a really good question, and I completely get what you're saying. That's something that I can't answer right now because I just honestly don't know. But like, I'm inclined to say that it wouldn't be duplication if they've already used up the allotted amount of respite available. You know, it's not duplicating a service that's currently available to them if they don't have any more left for the month. You know, does that make sense? Is that kind of along the same lines as what you're?
Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah,
Monica, if you
yeah.
ever find out that answer, if you could
Yeah.
send it off to Janine, that would be great.
Absolutely. No, I will find out an answer. Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. And I certainly hope that, that is the case. But that's something I'm probably going to have to ask somebody who's really a lot more well-versed in Medicaid than I am. So yeah, but I'll definitely get an answer back as soon as I can on that. Okay. All right. Were there any other questions before I move on? No? Okay. So family peer support, that is a person who can kind of serve as a bridge. It can help families engage with different community resources, things that are out there to help them. This is a great service if somebody is kind of new to services, because that can really be daunting. You know, just having the knowledge and skills to navigate through all, I'm probably preaching to the choir because I'm sure a good portion of the people on this call have been through that themselves. But, you know, just helping people navigate through all those, you know, systems and all those different things. So this family peer support would be someone who has that shared experience, who has successfully gone through that process themselves, and can help more families do that. So is there a question? No? Okay. So yeah, it's just, you know, helping families, helping the parents learn self-advocacy, empowering them, helping them understand that they, you know, this is something they can do. They're not alone in this journey, that they have some help. And you know, this is one of those services where you eventually hope to work yourself out of a job. Definitely. You hope that you can provide the parents and the family with the skills that they need to navigate independently. It can be help for parental skill development. And then just like I said, establishing those community connections and those natural supports so that their independence can improve, you know, and grow in their community, and they can be, you know, have those natural supports and not need to rely on services as much to help them do what they need to do. So are there questions at all on the family peer supports?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so.
Okay. Supported employment, the reason that I include this in this presentation is that this service is available starting at the age of 14. So what this is it's support to obtain or maintain competitive employment. We want individuals to, I mean, you know, a lot of us had jobs when we were young. If that's appropriate for someone, that's a great step, you know, as a teenager, if they're able to do that. But we want people to understand that we want everyone to be working at a competitive job, not doing, you know, piecework if they can stay away from that. We want everyone making above minimum wage, or at least minimum wage, so competitively employed. So we want to offer this service to support those efforts. where it's appropriate. So supported employment starts off as intensive engagement. It's really that hand over hand kind of job coaching, helping individuals learn all of the things that they need to be a successful employee. And that's not like the technical skills of their job necessarily. It's more those things like, you know, if there's conflicts with coworkers, how do you handle that? How do you handle conflicts with your boss? How do you, you know, make sure your time card is accurate? What are lunch breaks? Like how do you navigate, you know, making sure you're back in time for lunch breaks, and, you know, dressing appropriately for work, and all of those different skills that the employer doesn't teach a person. This is something that the support can teach them. Like I said, that's intensive engagement right away. And then ideally after about 6 months, it would taper off into follow along support. So it would be checking in, you know, on a pretty regular basis, just making sure things were going okay, and kind of, you know, helping make sure that things are on track and the individual's meeting their goals, and that that there's nothing that needs to be addressed as far as their employment. So this can really be customized to look like whatever the individual needs. There's a lot of different models that can be followed, or, you know, the team can decide what's best for the individual, and that can be the route. So all sorts of things, job development, job coaching, you know, like I said, those supports to ease integration with their coworkers, with their management, those types of things. So that's it for those 6 services. I do want to talk about the amendment update. And some of you might be more familiar than others with the 1959 and have maybe heard about, you know, some things that our stakeholders have brought to our attention that they wanted changed or updated. And all of these changes have come about as a result of stakeholder feedback. So we really appreciate and welcome that anytime. So we have proposed some changes to the amendment. It was submitted October 12th, I believe. October, it's not October yet, September 12th. And so CMS has 90 days to follow, to basically let us know if our amendment has been approved or not, as we've submitted it. So we will hopefully know in the middle of December that our changes have been approved. If they aren't, they'll get back to us and let us know what they don't agree with, or what we need to work on, or kind of negotiate with them. So that's kind of the timeline there. But what we have requested, like I mentioned before, is to lower that qualifying HUDAS score to 25. And that's really going to encompass just a huge amount of additional individuals who will be eligible for services. So that's really exciting. We're really, really hopeful that that's where we will land. We did clarify some qualifications for the HUDAS administrators and what those are. We did make some updates to the application and to some of the policies to remove some barriers that were standing in people's way when applying, or making things maybe a little more cumbersome than they had to be. We did make some pretty significant updates to the diagnoses list to include a lot more diagnoses that were not originally on the amendment. There was some minor inflationary rate increases. So like with the training and support for unpaid caregivers, originally it was $500 a year. Now I think it's like $520 a year. Just some pretty minor increases there. And then we made some updates to the provider requirements to be more inclusive as well. We realized that some of the qualifications we were asking for the providers, while we do want to have, we want to protect the integrity of the services provided, that some of the qualifications were a little bit unachievable for some of our smaller providers. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to be more inclusive with who could enroll for providers. So those are the changes that we've requested.
Can you give a little bit of an example of qualifying diagnoses? What was added to it?
Absolutely. In fact, why don't I pull up the list here? I'm going to go back because I got the list linked. Sorry, there we go. Okay. So it should pull up here, I think. Shoot, it's on another screen. Oh, that's not it. Oh, my link is not good. Okay, I'm going to try a different way here. Hold on. What's happening here? Okay, I think I have a copy saved here too on my desktop. So let me try to, my PDF doesn't want to open for some reason. There we go. Okay, so if I drag this over, can you guys see that? The Word document?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna make it like this so it's easier to. It's a night of technical difficulties for me, my goodness. Okay, so the top diagnoses here in this kind of separate section are all more related to brain injury. So there's some mental illness diagnoses that are related to physical conditions, mood disorders, psychotic disorder due to another medical condition. Those, like I said, are more those brain injury diagnoses. And then anxiety disorder, there's a ton of substance use disorder diagnoses. Pretty much any possible substance use disorder diagnoses is represented there. And then we have, let's see, all of the different categories of schizophrenia, psychotic disorders, manic episodes, bipolar 1 and 2, depressive disorder, and then persistent depressive disorder, agoraphobia, social anxiety, panic disorder, OCD, PTSD. There's some that are kind of more common for children and youth here too, but I'll get to those in a second. But like borderline, ADHD, predominantly inattentive, predominantly hyperactive combination, autism spectrum disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, and then conduct disorders, oppositional defiant disorders, separation anxiety, disinhibited attachment disorder of childhood, and then reactive attachment disorder are kind of probably some of the more common ones we're going to see. Does somebody have a question about a specific disorder? I can see if I can find it on here.
Can you, when you send the PowerPoint, Monica, can you also send this list of diagnoses?
Yeah, I'll send it separately in case it doesn't open right on the PowerPoint, because I don't know what's going on with my computer. I checked all these links earlier and they worked, so I don't know. But yeah, no, I'll definitely provide this. And this list is also the last, like, so when you pull up the application, and I wonder if I can do that. When you pull up the application, the last, it's like 12 pages long, and the last like 5 or 6 or 7 pages are all the diagnoses. It's the entire list is on there. So so it'll be, it's kind of all over the place. So individual enrollment, let me see if I can pull up the enrollment form. I feel like it's going to do the same thing. Oh, no, it didn't. So this is what the enrollment form looks like. So it talks about, you know, the different qualifications that we discussed. And then just, you know, it gives instruction that this form gets submitted to the Human Service Zone, which is formerly known as the county social service offices. So I need to make this a little smaller maybe. Okay. So the first section is the applicant information. So it's the you know, we want the Medicaid number, the demographic information of the individual. And then if you're enrolled in Medicaid, if you fall within that 150% of the federal poverty level, and if you will reside and be receiving services in a home and community-based setting. So this is basically, if you answer no to being enrolled in Medicaid, that's where you stop, because you got to first enroll in Medicaid. So we kind of ranked them like that. And then the signatures, so there's guardian information and then contact information if there's an additional contact to be listed, or if somebody doesn't have a legal guardian, but has somebody who they want to be listed on their application, they can put that there. And then this is just saying that, yes, they're agreeing to apply for an eligibility for 1915I services. So we get the signatures there. And then, so the diagnosis section here, this is where we collect that information, and we can accept a printout now from, so it used to be right away where you had to take this to the physician or take this to whoever diagnosed and get them to complete it and sign off. But now we can accept a printout like from somebody's My Chart or from a human service center, anything that's from an official health record, we can accept that rather than this section being filled out, which that's one of those things that we kind of tried to eliminate some of the barriers to application. And then there's the section for the HUDAS information. So once that HUDAS assessment is completed, it's entered into here for the eligibility worker so that they can enter it into their system. And then here is the diagnosis list too. And it's the exact same list. It's just copied into here. Any questions on the application or any of that stuff? All right, we'll keep going here.
There is one question about how many are currently accessing services under the
Yeah.
1959.
So right now today, 42 individuals have enrolled. Now, this is a very small number. We're really, I've been saying this for a few months, but it's still true. We're at a kind of a really delicate balance where, you know, we've got providers slowly enrolling to providing, we've got individuals slowly enrolling to receive services. Because, you know, we have some resistance from providers saying, well, there's no individuals that are enrolling. And then we have individuals saying, well, where are the providers? I don't want to enroll unless there's providers. So it's kind of, I think both sides are kind of trickling in right now. We are picking up speed though with our provider enrollment. We have a lot who are in process right now. And we do have quite a few individuals that are in process of enrolling as well. While it can be a pretty quick process, if the application isn't completed all the way, it gets put in a pending status, and then we need to, you know, finish collecting all the information and kind of go back and forth. So that kind of holds up the process a little bit. But yeah, 42 as of today. Now, when you consider that when the 1915I was originally proposed, based on the eligibility criteria, they estimated that over 11,000 people in North Dakota would be eligible for the services. So drop in the bucket as far as the capacity for people receiving services. And then when we lower that HUDAS score, hopefully to 25, that'll open up for more individuals to be eligible. So at some point here in the near future, it's really going to start picking up and take off. We're kind of a little bit glad it's been slow because we've had some bumps that we've kind of had to work out along the way. And we've been able to do that as we go without impacting large amounts of individuals and holding up their enrollment. So that's been kind of the blessing with that, but we're ready definitely to start getting more people enrolled. So
One more question is, where does someone get assessed via the HUDAS?
yeah, so the HUDAS, so at each of the human service zones, so at each of the county offices, there is an individual who's been designated to do the HUDAS assessments. Now, it doesn't have to be done at the zone. If somebody's receiving services at the Human Service Center, then the Human Service Centers do those HUDAS assessments as well. And that information can just be provided to the zone that can be attached to the application. So,
Okay. Thank
yeah.
you.
Or anybody else, there are some, private therapy places that can do the HUDAS. Anybody who's been trained on how to do it specifically for the 1915I is able to do the HUDAS. So, but it's easiest to probably go to the zone if you need to go to someone, because that's they do quite a few. So
There might be a few on the call tonight that don't know what the zone is.
oh, okay.
Because that might
So-
be new for some people.
Yeah. So the zone, so each county in North Dakota used to have its own social services office. And I don't know exactly the time frame, but a few years ago, there was a redesign, kind of an effort to kind of streamline things. So rather than each county having their own, they created, I think it's 34 different human service zones across the state, which encompass multiple counties. Now, our 5 biggest counties haven't changed. They have their own zone that they've always had. So Ward, Grand Forks, Cass County, Burley, and Morton, business as usual there. That hasn't changed. But a lot of the other smaller counties have kind of consolidated their resources. And while they might have a small satellite office in each of the counties, their operations are centralized at the zone office rather than separated into the county offices. So yeah, and it's kind of a unique situation because the human service centers, they're divided into the eight regions in North Dakota. Those don't correlate with the zones. So somebody might be, so yeah, it's since there's only 8 human service centers and there's 34, I think it's 34 zones. You might receive services at a human service center, but then qualify, to zone that's outside of that human service center kind of direct area. It's kind of a weird thing. There's 2 separate maps to go by when you, in fact, this map here. See, these links work. So this is a map of the human service zones in the state. And if you need information on, the address or anything like that, all of these links are live. So you can go right to the zone office. So that's what that looks like. So after an individual has been determined to be eligible for 1915I services, they are provided with a list of the agencies in their area that provide care coordination. Like I mentioned before, that care coordination is that first step and is the person who does that assessment process and develops that plan of care. So the individual then is able to choose from the different care coordination agencies in their area. Now, right now, because we, are still working on our provider enrollment base, in a lot of areas, there is only one choice, and that's not ideal. But Community Options has really stepped up to the plate and registered or enrolled to provide all of the services in almost every area of the state. So it's a real blessing that they're able to provide that care coordination for people, pretty much regardless of where they live. So we don't have to wait, have people be on a wait list for that care coordination.
Another
So-
question just popped up, Monica, that is there any one-stop shop to direct people through the application process?
Yes, the human service zones are definitely able to do that. Yes, absolutely. And right now, I can't say it's gonna look the same in a year, but I'm more than happy to help anybody through the process as well. As you know, whatever I can do to help. So my contact information is gonna be at the end of the presentation. Please reach out with any questions or any needs you have. But yeah, the human service zone is kind of that one-stop shop. They can hand you a paper application. They can, they can do that HUDAS. They can probably even help you pull up your My Chart and print off that list if that's, if that's how you want to provide that diagnosis. So that's as close as you're going to get to a one-stop shop. Yeah.
And the other question was, is there a list of contact people available zone by zone?
There, I would probably, so what you want to do, we provided like a cheat sheet to all the zones for their front desk person, where they are supposed to write on there, like, when someone calls wondering about 1959, this is who I send them to. So we don't have an all-inclusive list of the eligibility workers' names that we're able to publish or contact information. So what I would recommend is to use this resource here. So like if I'm in Cass County, or say I live in Williston, what is that? That's McKenzie County, I think. So let's see.
Williams County.
What's that? Williams County. Oh, you're right. You're right. That's one of our highest enrollment areas right now. I should know that. So if you click on the link for Williams County, it's going to bring you to the page that shows their contact information, and then where they also have other offices as well. So yeah, you would just call that main number at the zone and just ask to speak with the 1959 eligibility worker. And then the same, if you're calling to schedule a HUDAS appointment, you would just call that and say, I need to schedule a HUDAS assessment. Can you please transfer me to that person? So yeah, that's going to be your best bet. People kind of come and go and people switch, and we've already had quite a few people step up and say, I want to do 1959. I'm going to do it instead of this person at our office, so the list would never quite be accurate all the time. So this is probably your best bet for that. So as far as what's next, this is really important. We definitely want to make sure that the 1959, like once we have everything where we think everything is running smoothly, that's not where we're going to stop. We're going to look at how we can improve services, what other services we can look at pursuing. We have been told that our 1959 amendment, we're one of a handful of states that has one right now. We've been told that ours is by far the most robust out of all of the states. Some states just focus, like I can't remember which state it is, but one of them's focused just on housing. So all they offer is supports related to housing because that's the biggest need in their state. We really tried to be broad with the services because these were all areas that were recognized as areas where there were gaps. But we're not going to stop, assessing what people need. I'm part of my job is going to be really engaging with the stakeholders and getting feedback and just making sure that the 1959 is, working to serve the needs of the people who need it. So, I just want to make that really clear that if you ever have any feedback or questions or, hey, can you look at this? Please reach out. I've got kind of an ongoing list of when we're ready to do a new amendment again. These are the things that we need to look at. So we can't just do amendments all the time because of how labor intensive and time intensive it is. But there will be definitely multiple and ongoing changes to the amendment. So my plan is just to continue education efforts for referral sources. You know, it's really important for me to get the information out there to anybody who might come in contact with individuals who could benefit from the services, whether that be churches, shelters, health units in towns, you know, just any kind of clinics, you name it. Like there's an unlimited amount of places that could be referral sources for 1915I. So I want to make sure that as many people in the state are educated as far as what we can offer and what an individual might look like who would be eligible for services. And then we're going to be just, you know, helping people navigate the system, helping people navigate after they've applied. Right now, I'm watching all of the individuals who are approved, and reaching out and making sure that they have the tools they need to navigate to a care coordinator. Because some people might get that letter from the zone and say, I don't understand what this means. This is too much. I'm not going to do it. So we want to make sure that we're facilitating those connections with the care coordinator. And once they're connected with that care coordinator, they take it from there. And they're doing their job and making sure that the individual is getting all the services they need. You know, I'm just working on establishing good strategies for communicating with stakeholders. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. We've been so deep in updating the amendment and just making sure things are running smoothly that I haven't had time to do a lot of visioning. But that's super important for the success of the plan and just to ensure that people are getting the services. So that's definitely a priority area for me. And then also just continuing that outreach for potential providers. And right now, it seems kind of counterintuitive, but those 5 large counties that I mentioned in North Dakota, those are all designated as not being provider shortage areas, whereas the rest of North Dakota is designated as provider shortage areas. Due to the conflict of interest standards that are built into the 1915I, in the areas that don't have provider shortage, the care coordinator can't work for the same place that provides those other services to the person. So for instance, in Fargo, the person's care coordinator and the person's family peer supports have to work at different agencies. And that's basically so that the care coordinator can't say, you need XYZ LMNOP services, and we can provide them all for you. You know, it's built in as a protection. Now, in all of the other areas of the state, in all of the other counties, those two things can happen under the same roof. So for right now, my efforts are really focused on Ward County, Grand Forks County, Cass, Burley, and Morton, as far as enrolling more providers, so that we have, you know, first of all, we have enough providers to where somebody can have care coordination and those other services in the area they live, but then also just to make sure that people do have choice in their providers as well. So we're not just saying, here's your choice that you have, you know, we wish we had more, sorry. So that's, you know, ideally we'd like to have 3 or 4 choices for each service for the individual so they can really choose what their preference is. So that's going to be ongoing. But for right now, that's, you know, if anybody has any ideas of potential providers, I'm finding Bismarck to be really tricky right now and Minot and Grand Forks. So if anybody has any ideas, I welcome those. As far as, you know, who could be providers. So was there a question?
Yeah, there is a question. It's what is the most used service from the 42 that are enrolled?
Right now, most of them are still in just the care coordination phase. That takes a little bit of time because of that plan development. But peer supports is right now the most, you know, what most people are going to be using first. And we do have, you know, thankfully we do have, like, the human service centers can provide peer supports to the adults who already use their other services there. So so fortunately, you know, peer supports is the most readily available to everyone in the state right now. I'm really excited about something which we're rolling out here pretty quickly, which is some provider, what do we call it? It's some grant funding that we have available that we can, that providers can apply for, and it can help them with costs that are associated with enrolling. And we're really encouraging providers who provide services for children to apply for those provider incentive grants is what they're called. So we'll be rolling those out very soon. We're just, you know, finalizing all of the details with that. So we're really trying to work hard to get some more providers that can provide the services for children and youth enrolled. So.
Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, this is.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I had a quick question, and this might have been brought to your attention, but like when I reached out to refer for peer support to the Human Service Center, I was told that they reserve that for crisis.
Yeah, I'm battling a lot of misinformation, shall we say, right now. Yes, that has been brought to my attention.
Okay, I figured it's such a struggle, and I want to get services for my people, and I can't. So it's good to talk to you, actually.
Yeah, no, I'm really like, I've really gotten some great feedback. Like I have a lot of people who just don't hesitate to pick up the phone and let me know when they're running into roadblocks. And I welcome that 100%. I don't know why it's so difficult to get the same information to all of the people who need it. It's proving to be really difficult. I'm making some headway there, but yeah, we have some of the human service centers are just running on different information than others right now. I can tell you that they will provide peer supports for anyone who has an open case at the Human Service Center.
Okay,
currently.
good to know, because I was told to get back with the crisis person there, and I still haven't had an answer really.
Yeah,
So
and
that's
that
good.
is something that we just hammered out the end of last week, I believe.
Thank you very much.
Yes. I'm happy to help with any, you know, if anybody's running up against issues or roadblocks, please let me know. I can't always help, you know, I can't always do the thing that will help, but I know who to ask. And I have some really good partners and some really good champions for 1959 services who are really willing to step up and help out with that. So yeah, we can definitely try to get through those together. So I was just going to show you guys, you know, I talked about the conflict of interest and the provider shortage areas and all that. This is kind of just like a visual that shows what that looks like. So there's 2 exceptions to those rules. And one is that mental health provider shortage area. So if the person doesn't live in a provider shortage area, that care coordination and service provision have to happen at 2 different agencies. And then the HUDAS has to happen somewhere else too. But in an area where there is a provider shortage, they can happen at the same agency, but it does have to be 3 separate individuals who handle those 3 different things. And like I said, typically that HUDAS is going to happen at the human service zone. So that's an easy way to remove that from the equation. But then that care coordination and service and all those other services would just have to be provided by 2 different people. And that's not to say at a small agency, we couldn't have, you know, 2 people enrolled to provide all of the services, but I couldn't provide care coordination for John Smith as well as peer supports for John Smith, where my coworker, you know, could provide those peer supports, but could also serve in the care coordination role for someone else. So, you know, we can definitely have people wearing different hats and providing different services. But the other exception to that rule that Medicaid is allowed is if there's any kind of cultural or language considerations. And if there's only one agency that has employees who may share that culture or language with the individual, then we can make that exception as well, regardless of where they live. So even if they live in Fargo and there's one agency where they have employees who might share that culture with an individual, then they can be provided by the same agency. But again, it would have to be two different people. So we might need to get creative in those situations with the use of interpreters, whichever way that makes sense, you know, different things like that. We do have interpreter services available that we can tap into. So yeah, so just be aware that that's another exception to that rule, you know, and in some of the areas of the state, that's going to be probably a really important thing for some of our individuals. So, and that's all determined by the University of North Dakota, the School of Medicine, their Center for Rural Health. They track all that and keep that list up to date. I don't anticipate any changes in the provider shortage areas. Like they're not going to make, even though it feels like there is, and there really is a provider shortage in even the larger areas, I don't think it meets the qualifications as far as being designated that, like in Fargo.
So one of the last questions that popped up was the HUDAS assessment could happen in any human service zone. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep, it can.
Okay.
Yep. And truth be told, you might get a little, like somebody might answer the phone and say, I don't know what that is. Because some of the zones haven't had any applications, and sometimes random people pick up the phone, to be honest. So if you run into any of that where, you know, you're feeling any trouble brewing with getting that taken care of, please reach out and I'll bridge that with the human service zone to make sure that we can get that done for you. So,
Okay.
So here is some contact information. This first email address is kind of just a general inbox that's checked by about 5 of us. You're going to get a quicker response if you email me directly. And if I can't answer your question, I'll loop someone in who can. And then this is the link to our website. Let's see if that works. Aha, that does work. So this is, you know, there's a section for how to apply for services, and that's got the application and the diagnosis list and all that kind of stuff. That's probably going to be your biggest help. Like I said, if you need help navigating this, let me know. I'd be more than happy to help you out with that, or just to send you direct links, whatever you need. So yeah, that's all I have for you. Any other questions?
Can any of the service providers be providers, or do they have to like sign up to be a provider in order to offer the support?
They have to enroll with Medicaid to be a provider. Yeah. So yeah, there's a group enrollment and then an individual service provider enrollment. So the group enrollment is at the agency level, and then the individual service provider enrolls under them as the person who's actually rendering the services. Does that make sense? Or did I answer your question? Sometimes I give an answer that doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, no, that works. Thank you very much. So if we know of a provider that offers services in our community, how should we go about it? Just ask them if they're connected with the 1915I in order to like help you get more services?
Oh, absolutely. Or if you want to do that and loop me in, provider outreach is one of the major pieces of my job. So that's what I do. A lot of times I spend entire days just reaching out to providers and meeting with them and talking about, you know, what they can do to make a good impact on their communities. And yeah, so either whichever way you're more comfortable with, or both ways, absolutely. I'm finding that I want everything now. I want tons of providers enrolled right now, and I want tons of people receiving services. But it's really it's a lot to get to kind of coordinate everything all at one time. Because I'm trying to,
so-
the referrals and the individuals and the providers all at once, so.
So just so I know, exactly, like, if there's a service out there, right? Basically, they have to be able to accept Medicaid.
Yes,
In
yeah.
order to be on the list. So if they already accept it, they should be able to already do the 1915I, but if they're not accepting Medicaid currently, then they would not, correct?
Well, they still have, even if they do already bill through Medicaid, they still do have to do the provider enrollment for 1959.
Okay, perfect.
It's a
Thank you.
separate, yeah,
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
you bet.
Another question in the chat is how long does the provider enrollment normally take?
You know, I've been told that they are prioritizing 1959 enrollment. It's Noridian who takes care of that. Now, it can really vary a lot because if Noridian gets a complete application and there's no reason for them to come back and say, this is missing or this box needs checked, whatever. I mean, it can happen within maybe a week to 2 weeks. Honestly, I've seen where maybe there's a piece of the application that's missing and Noridian reaches out to the provider. Maybe they didn't get their email and it got buried and it's months later and they're like, where's my enrollment at? So it's, you know, really good to stay on top of it and make sure that things keep moving. Because it seems like no matter what, I've never seen one just go through and be approved. Because there's always a piece that maybe needs updated or fixed or whatever. But that being said, you know, like within a week to 2 weeks, if the application's complete, that's a pretty reasonable time. And I have had a lot of people reach out and say, can you check on where my application is, and might be hung up somewhere on Noridian's side. And I have a really good contact there who can unhang it and get it moving again. So yeah, just be in communication. That's really the key with, you know, making sure things are moving smoothly and moving along. So.
One more, Monica, is does it
Yeah.
require one or an NPI number associated with one MA provider number to provide all services, or is it separate NPIs and MA numbers for each services?
Oh, so let me think of let me just process that for a second. Because the billing and stuff in enrollment is not my expertise area, but I know enough about it to be dangerous. So I do know that the group provider needs one NPI number, and the individual provider needs one NPI number. So they each need that, but an individual underneath their one NPI number can enroll to provide care coordination, housing supports, peer supports, respite, all of those different services. So I'm fairly certain it's one NPI number for the agency, for the group, and one NPI number for the individual provider.
And then a follow-up to that is the EVV tied to any of the services?
EVV they're using for respite. To date, we have not actually provided any respite under 1959 yet. But that is going to be used for respite, yes.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I couldn't answer any more questions about EVV. That I'd have to get help to answer those questions. So.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. None?
All right, and I just want to make 100% sure that I've got the right question I need to get an answer for. Was it Vicky that asked about if
Yep.
you're on okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm clear and I get the right answer for you. So you want to know if somebody has respite through another, like a waiver, and they use it up if they can use 1915I respite once they've used up their limit, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay,
And
perfect.
if you want to just send that answer to Janine, that is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do that. I wrote down only half of the questions, so I just wanted to make sure that I got the rest before I hung up, so. Yeah, all right, and please just reach out with questions, you guys. I'm total transparency. I'm here to help. Providers, individuals, families, everything. That's just my main goal, so.
That's great. Well, thank you, Monica, for spending the evening with us. It was really informative. I learned a lot this evening. The one, just a kind of a plug for our next extended learning call is going to be October 11th. And Vicki, who spoke earlier, is going to be providing information on ABLE accounts and how to start an ABLE account for your children or adult with a disability. So that will be at the same time at 8 o'clock, and we hope you can join us. So an announcement will come out about that probably tomorrow. So with that, thank you again, Monica, for everything. And I hope everybody has a great evening. And then also, you know, again, just a reminder, if you jotted down Monica's email address, if you have any follow-up questions, I'm sure she would be happy to answer those. Or if you didn't jot her number down, send them to me and I will give them to her. So just let me know. But thanks everybody for joining tonight, and have a good rest of the evening. Thanks, Monica.
You bet. Bye.
Bye-bye.